metronomes, and why you need a metronome. This video was made to go into a playlist that's a guitar course for absolute beginners on the guitar. However, really, this lesson is useful for anyone on any instrument at any level. But if you're a guitarist just getting started, you might find that playlist really useful. So I'll put the link to it down below in the description. Anyhow, let's get on with it. What is a metronome and why do you need one? A metronome is a device that keeps a constant beat. And if you ever want to play with another musician or with a singer or in a band, you really need to practice with a metronome or something that does the same job, for example a drum machine. Now this is probably one of the most overlooked and ignored subjects, and that's because most musicians just think, nah, I can practice without. And I used to think like that until I started teaching and bringing together new bands. The biggest problem I've come across with new bands, especially of inexperienced musicians, is that they just can't maintain the correct tempo together. And even if they do manage to keep the tempo, they're just not rhythmically tight, which is really important if you want to sound good. And the reason for this is each musician is trying to listen to the other musicians to keep together with the rhythm, rather than relying on one source, for example the drum kit. And only practicing keeping with drum beats or a metronome beat from a very early stage really gets you tight with the beat when it's time to do so. And only by practicing with a drum beat or with a metronome will you ever get so used to playing with a rhythm that it'll become automatic. And even if you don't think you'll ever want to play with a band, it's still essential to use a metronome. Something I frequently see, especially with absolute beginners, is people play according to their ability. So say for example you're going between two chords you find easy, you'll do this change quickly. Whereas if it's a more difficult chord, you'll do this change more slowly. Now, if you're learning a tune this way, it will never make sense. However, if you practice it with a metronome, you'll be able to make the tune fit with what you're playing. And these days, there's no excuse not to have a metronome or some sort of drum machine, because whatever device you use, you can download a free version for that device. So basically, whatever you're watching this video on, you can get a free metronome for that device. And if you've got Google Chrome on any of your devices, just type in metronome and you get an app there from within the Google Chrome browser. And whilst I was making this video, I did a quick search for free metronome apps, and there's loads. There was even a website for the best top 5 metronome apps for my device, which is a PC. However, whatever your device is, you're better doing your own search and you can find the best one for your device. But before you do that, here's a quick rundown of some of the metronomes that are available on the market, with some of the advantages and disadvantages of them. Metronomes in their various forms. The traditional metronome. We can't really look at metronomes without looking at them in their traditional form. And they even use this symbol in modern software as the icon for the background beat. And even though this style of metronome is over 200 years old, they still make them to this day, using different materials but basically the same thing. Here for example, we've got a modern traditional metronome and one that's over 100 years old. And whilst the modern one is actually made of plastic in a wood look, it is essentially the same as the traditional metronome in that it functions in exactly the same way. I'm sure most of you have seen one of these metronomes, but for those of you who haven't, here's how they actually work. The first thing you have to do is wind the metronome up because it's clockwork. Then, to set the speed, you adjust the position of the weight on the pendulum. The higher up the weight is, the slower the metronome will go. And you can see on the scale behind the pendulum, it actually gives you an idea of the beats per minute. To allow the metronome to work, you release the pendulum from the small bit of metal that's at the top of the metronome. With many of the traditional metronomes, but not all, you've got a bar notification bell as well. So you can select 2 beats per bar, 3 beats per bar, 4 beats per bar, or 6 beats per bar. And whichever one you have selected, that's when the bell will ring. So for example, here's a 4 beats per bar bell. There's obviously a lot of advantages to buying a new metronome. For example, when you buy one, it should work straight out of the box. And if it doesn't, you should be able to return it and get your money back or get a replacement. And new metronomes are usually a lot cheaper than antique ones. However, when you're looking for a new metronome, you can get both wooden ones and plastic ones. And if you're fussy about the tone, it's better to go for the wooden ones, because the plastic ones do sound quite tacky and quite cheap. The advantages of the antique version are that they sound a lot nicer, if that's important to you in a metronome, and they do increase in value over time. However, they're usually far more expensive to buy unless you're really lucky. And being old, they can have problems. To give you an idea of the problems you can have with an old metronome, this one, when I first got it, it wouldn't maintain a steady speed. It would speed up and slow down all the time. However, with a bit of use and cleaning out the inside, it's become really stable now and it works really well. But, as you can imagine, there's always risks with something that's many years old. Desktop, electronic or digital metronomes. Once you get into electronic or digital metronomes, they tend to have multiple purposes. So for example, these are also tuners. And the ones I've got here are just cheap ones, but they've got all the functionality you need and they're always accurate. And a couple of the advantages I like about these ones here is that they're rechargeable. So when the battery goes flat, you just plug it into a USB port and it charges back up again. However, watch out if you're thinking of buying one of these, because they're not all rechargeable. So if you want that feature, make sure it's in the specification. On the electronic metronomes, the bar and beat notifications are different. It depends on the make you get. And on some of the more expensive ones, you can actually change the sounds. But in the end of the day, you just want something to help you keep time. So I don't really consider that to be too important. For anyone who's been through a few of the lessons in the fingerstyle course, you might recognise the sound on these two metronomes, because I've used them both in that particular course. Because these are rechargeable, easy to use, and they double up as tuners, I use these all the time. They're really good workhorses. And of course, something I forgot to mention is the fact with these metronomes you can control the volume, and if you want you can even use headphones. Right, let's move on to the final category of metronomes we're going to look at in this video, and that is clip-on and wearable metronomes. As with all technology, metronomes are getting smaller all the time. And when it comes to clip-on devices, you probably associate them more with tuners. However, more and more these days, you're actually getting metronomes built into the tuners, so the device has an extra purpose. However, when it comes to the clip-on device, I wouldn't recommend one of these unless you get a rechargeable one. The vast majority of them are powered by button cells, which don't last long and are expensive. And whilst it's fine as a tuner, they can last for months as a tuner. When you start using a metronome, it soon drains the batteries down. Obviously, this is a far less important issue if the battery is rechargeable. The main advantage of a metronome tuner is that it can always be with you. So when you find you need a metronome, you've got one to hand. And just like the larger electronic metronomes, they're fully adjustable. You can adjust the speed, the time signature, and the volume. The final style of metronome we'll look at in this video is the wearable metronome, and these most commonly come in the format of a watch, and you can get apps for existing smartwatches, or you can get dedicated metronomes in the form of a watch, or you can get musicians' watches that have various other music related functions on them. This watch metronome is also a tuner and a decibel meter, but the metronome has a visual cue in terms of a flashing light. It vibrates on your wrist, and there's a mobile app that allows you to hear the metronome beats through the phone, or just use your phone as a metronome, or you can control other functions of the watch as well. So this has got virtually everything you need from a metronome. However, this style is very expensive, and if you just want a metronome, I think it's a bit of an overkill. However, if this is the kind of metronome you're looking for, I've done a full review of this particular smartwatch, so you can take a look at that. And when I originally did that review, Soundbrenner gave me a link and a discount code, so you could get 20% off anything you bought in their shop. So I'll put that code and the link down below in the description. To summarise then, every student musician should have a metronome. And these days, with so many free metronomes available, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't have a metronome, either in the form of an app for your PC, Mac or smartphone, or you find a metronome directly through a browser, like the Google Chrome one. So, if you want to sound good and fluid with your playing, or if you want to play with other musicians, you really need to practice with a metronome. If you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more like it, please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload new lessons and new music related videos. As I mentioned at the beginning, this video is part of a guitar course for absolute beginners. And if you want to go through that course, I'll put the link to it down below in the description. However, if you're more advanced and you're looking for free guitar lessons, visit my YouTube channel and take a look through the playlists. Or, alternatively, you'll find them better catalogued and easier to navigate at www.ebooksforguitar.com. And there you'll also find a number of free PDFs, and you can also buy the entire collection of PDFs if you want to. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you'll be back again in the future for more guitar and music related videos.